The reservation popped up on his screen at 7:04 p.m., a soft chime breaking the silence between us. Le Mistral confirms your table for two, Friday at 7:30 p.m. Window seat, as requested. Nathan was in the shower. I was folding laundry on the edge of the bed when I saw it, his phone, face up, glowing with a message not meant for me. And just like that, my world split. I didn't unlock it immediately. I sat there, holding a towel to my chest, my fingers frozen mid-fold. The steam from the bathroom hissed gently, masking the sound of my breath quickening. We had our 30th anniversary coming up in a month. We once dreamed of going to Le Mistral for that milestone, but Nathan had said the timing wasn't right, too busy, too tired, too expensive. But apparently it wasn't too expensive for someone else. My hand moved before my heart could catch up. I tapped the screen. The passcode hadn't changed in 10 years. Our wedding date, 0518. For digits. For lies. What I found was not a mistake, not a one-time lapse in judgment. It was an entire second life. A private world shared with someone named Kelsey. Kelsey Grant. Photos. Messages. Voice memos. Videos from Chicago, Portland. Even one from a rooftop bar in Toronto, where he was supposedly at a board retreat. There she was, blonde, polished, maybe mid-30s, curled into him like a promise he never gave me. He smiled wider in those photos than he had in years. I hadn't seen that smile since the day our youngest left for college. I'd thought maybe the house, growing quiet, had dimmed something in him. I'd blamed the silence on life, not deceit. The pain didn't explode. It condensed, like a storm building inward. I sat back on the bed, phone resting on my lap like a confession. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I folded the last shirt in the basket with perfect corners and slid it into Nathan's drawer, right next to his cologne. Then I placed his phone gently back on the nightstand and walked into the kitchen. The hum of the refrigerator, the soft tick of the clock on the wall, and me, staring into a cup of tea gone cold. I remembered a conversation from 2 weeks ago. He had canceled our dinner with the Trumans because of work. Now I knew it wasn't a work night, it was Kelsey night. I pressed my fingertips against the countertop. The granite felt like ice. Vanessa? His voice came, muffled from the bathroom. Have you seen my blue checkered shirt? The one with the French cuffs? Second drawer, left side, I replied. My voice was flat, surgical. He couldn't hear the tremble under it, or maybe he never had. That night, I lay beside him as he fell asleep within minutes, the room filled with the steady rhythm of his breathing. My back was turned to him, eyes wide open in the dark. I stared at the shadows on the ceiling, tracing their edges like I was trying to outline the shape of betrayal. It wasn't just the affair. It was the ease, the efficiency, the effortless way he carried 2 lives like nothing was wrong. And the way he looked at her in that video, from the plane ride to Santa Monica, it wasn't lust. It was tenderness, familiarity. He kissed the side of her head like it was routine, like it was home. I thought back to the week before when I had asked him if he wanted to come with me to the school gala. He had smiled kindly, said he was too wiped out from a week of meetings. That same night, I now realized he was posting photos with her at a jazz lounge downtown. I remember once, years ago, my mother told me that the real end of a marriage isn't the fight or even the affair. It's when one person starts living like the other doesn't exist. That night, I felt non-existent in my own bed, my own life, but I also knew something else, something colder. I wasn't going to let him shatter me. I wouldn't be the sobbing woman on the kitchen floor, begging for an explanation. That woman had existed in my imagination once, maybe in my 20s, but I was 61 now. I had lived through raising 2 boys, burying a father, surviving layoffs, and learning to sleep alone even when someone else was in the bed beside me. I pulled the sheets higher and stared into the dark. Let him plan his dinner for Friday night. Let him think he'd gotten away with it, because what he didn't know yet was that I had already RSVP'd. Wednesday, 7:12 a.m. I was sitting in my car in the faculty parking lot, right outside Alder Ridge High, where I'd worked for nearly 20 years. The windshield was still fogged at the edges. The sky was pale, like it hadn't woken up yet. The school building stood quiet. No students, no laughter, just the low hum of my engine and the weight in my chest. I stared at my phone. I wasn't checking lesson plans or emails. I was typing out a different kind of message. Hi, Ms. Benson. My mother in Duluth was taken to the hospital last night. I'll need to take personal leave through Friday. I've arranged for a sub. Thank you for understanding. Technically, it wasn't a lie. My mother did live in Duluth. And thankfully, she was still perfectly healthy. I hit send, and then I just sat there, motionless, as if any sudden move might shatter whatever was left of the illusion I'd lived in for decades. I used to think infidelity happened like lightning, fast, unpredictable, violent. But that's not how Nathan did it. He didn't betray me in a single act. He did it in pieces, in soft, quiet omissions night after night, excuse after excuse, brushing a hand away, canceling plans, staying late at the office, each one carving a little more distance until I couldn't even remember the last time he looked at me with warmth in his eyes. I didn't need tears. I needed facts. I started with the most basic, Kelsey Grant, the name from the messages. A few quick searches, and there she was, Facebook, public profile, curated to perfection. Blonde, mid-30s, fit. Plenty of candid work events, champagne glasses, hotel lobbies. And then buried in her bio, married to Daniel Grant since 2018. Married. I kept digging. LinkedIn led me to Daniel. Structural engineer, based in St. Paul. Currently working on a sustainable housing project near the Riverside district. A man with calm eyes and clean edges. A man who probably thought he had a normal life. Until now. I opened my work email. I wasn't going to scream at Nathan. I wasn't going to confront Kelsey in a parking lot. That's not who I am. I wanted them to feel what it's like when truth walks in wearing heels. I drafted an email, calm, professional, surgically precise. Dear Mr. Grant, my name is Vanessa Morgan, and I currently serve as the Academic Programs Director at Alder Ridge High School. We are launching a career speaker series for our graduating seniors and came across your recent work in the Riverside Green Initiative. I was impressed by your innovative approach to sustainable design. If you're available, I'd love to discuss the possibility of having you speak at one of our sessions. I've scheduled a dinner meeting at Le Mistral this Friday at 7:30 p.m. to go over the details. Looking forward to your response. Warm regards, Vanessa Morgan. I read it twice. Not a single word betrayed the storm beneath it. Then I hit send. At 11:02 a.m., a reply landed in my inbox. Thank you, Mrs. Morgan. I'm honored by the invitation and would be happy to meet at Le Mistral on Friday at 7:30. See you then. I set my phone down. No relief, no triumph, just the quiet confirmation that every piece was falling into place. Then I picked up the phone again, this time to call Le Mistral directly. The hostess answered with polished cheer. Good afternoon, Le Mistral. How may I help you? Yes, I said, my voice steady. I'd like to reserve a table for 2 this Friday evening at 7:30 p.m. by the window if possible. We do have availability by the window, ma'am. Would you like to make any special arrangements? I hesitated just long enough to sound casual. If there's a way to seat us near the table under the name Nathan Morgan, I'd appreciate it. We're potential business partners and would like to be close by. Half-truths still count. Certainly. I'll place your table adjacent to theirs. Will you be ordering wine in advance? No, I said, offering the smallest smile, though she couldn't see it. Just give us a clear view. When I ended the call, I was standing by my hallway mirror. The reflection, staring back at me, wasn't the woman from the night before. She looked sharper. Her eyes no longer wavered. Her spine straighter. I reached for the back of my closet. There it was, the wine-colored silk dress Nathan had once called a little too bold for someone your age. I'd kept it anyway, maybe for this. I hung it on the door and looked at it for a long moment. Let him plan his perfect evening. Let her smile in candlelight and pretend she's won something. Let them think the world will protect their secret, because I won't. Thursday morning came with a gray sky and air thick enough to feel like something was about to snap. I didn't sleep much. I didn't try to. I spent most of the night replaying conversations I thought I understood. Only now, in hindsight, each one sounded like a riddle hiding a truth I didn't want to see. Nathan left early for work. He kissed my forehead like he had every morning for years, as if the routine could cover the cracks. I stood at the window and watched his car disappear down the driveway. I didn't wave. The second he was gone, I turned to my laptop. I needed confirmation. I pulled up Nathan's work calendar from our shared iCloud, something he'd set up years ago to keep us organized. He must have forgotten, or maybe he never imagined I'd look. Men like Nathan don't hide things carefully, they hide them confidently. There it was. Friday night. Dinner, Le Mistral. 7:30 p.m. window seating confirmed. Cabernet Sauvignon pre-ordered. Under notes, private, no schedule conflicts. He had even added a smiling face emoji. That was the detail that made my stomach turn. I stared at the screen. His entire evening had been laid out with the precision of someone planning an anniversary. Except it wasn't for his wife. It was for her. For Kelsey, the woman who had once sent him a photo in the middle of the workday, wearing nothing but his dress shirt, captioned, "Missing you already." I remembered because I saw it. It was still burned into my mind, the way her fingers traced the collar, the smug little smile, the way Nathan responded. "Don't forget our window seat Friday. You deserve a night that sparkles." Sparkles. He used to say that to me. When we first started dating, he told me my eyes sparkled when I talked about teaching. And now he gave those words away to a woman who'd never folded his laundry or held his mother's hand through chemotherapy. I closed the laptop and reached for my notebook. I wrote down 3 things. Number 1, reservation confirmed. Number 2, Daniel attending. Number 3, plan, do not raise voice. No dramatics. Truth only. Underneath, I added, let them fall on their own sword. By 2 p.m., I'd already visited the tailor. The silk dress needed a slight adjustment at the waist. I'd lost weight in the past few months and hadn't noticed until now. The young seamstress didn't ask why I needed it ready by tomorrow night. Maybe she could see it in my eyes. On the way home, I stopped by a boutique and bought a new pair of champagne-colored heels. I hadn't worn heels in months, maybe longer, but Friday wasn't about comfort. It was about control. That evening, I reheated leftover soup and ate alone at the kitchen counter. Nathan texted to say he'd be late, last-minute budget review. Sorry, babe. I stared at the message for a full minute before locking my phone. At 7:45 p.m., I got an email notification on my laptop. Subject: Speaker opportunity confirmation from Daniel Grant. Hi again, Mrs. Morgan. Just confirming our meeting for tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. Looking forward to the conversation. I've been meaning to get more involved with educational outreach, so this is perfect timing. I reread it 3 times. He still didn't know, but he would, and I would not be the one to scream it. I would not accuse or explain. I would only place the truth in front of him and let it speak for itself. Before heading to bed, I pulled out the small box of perfume I hadn't used in years, my favorite scent, soft and musky, the one Nathan said reminded him of our honeymoon in Sedona. I sprayed it once on my wrist. The smell flooded back, like memory wrapped in silk. I tucked the box into my purse. I wasn't wearing it for Nathan. I was wearing it for myself. By the time Nathan walked through the door at 10:08 p.m., I was already in bed. I pretended to be asleep. He kissed my temple, whispered, "Sorry, love. Long day." I didn't move. Let him think tomorrow would be just another night. Let him walk straight into it. Friday. 5:10 p.m. The city was wrapped in amber light, soft and golden as the sun dipped behind the Minneapolis skyline. I stood in front of the mirror, one earring in my palm, the other already clipped into place. The silk dress hugged my frame like it had been waiting for this moment as long as I had. The tailor had done a beautiful job. It no longer fit like a memory, it fit like a message. I applied my lipstick slowly, a muted berry tone, nothing dramatic, just enough to say, I am not invisible. At 6:30, I grabbed my purse and walked out the door. I didn't leave a note. I didn't need to. Nathan would see me soon enough. The ride downtown was quiet. I didn't play music. I wanted to hear the sound of the tires on pavement, to feel the pulse of the city moving around me, steady and indifferent. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't smiling. I was something in between, a steel calm that had taken days to forge. At 7:14, I arrived at Le Mistral. The hostess greeted me with a polished smile. "Good evening, ma'am. Table for two?" "Yes," I said, "under Vanessa Morgan. Right this way." She led me through the soft glow of chandeliers and velvet-backed chairs, past tables humming with laughter and clinking glasses. The restaurant felt like another world, one where people pretended reality didn't exist beyond the candlelight. She seated me at a table near the window. It was perfect. From this angle, I had a clear view of the next table over, currently unoccupied. The reservation for Nathan and Kelsey was still waiting to unfold. "Would you like something to drink while you wait?" the hostess asked. "A dirty martini," I said. "Extra olives." She nodded and left. I sat back and breathed in the moment. I'd rehearsed this 1,000 ways, but reality had its own rhythm. Nothing ever happens exactly the way we plan it, and yet sometimes it lands even better. At 7:22, I heard footsteps. "Mrs. Morgan." I turned. Daniel Grant stood there in a dark navy shirt and slate gray slacks. No tie, relaxed, but he looked tired. The kind of tired you don't get from work. The kind that seeps in when something feels off, and you haven't put your finger on it yet. "Daniel," I said, rising to shake his hand. "Thank you so much for coming." "The pleasure's mine," he said, taking his seat across from me. "The project at Riverside has been pretty demanding, but this sounded like a great opportunity." We exchanged polite smiles and began talking about education, public-private partnerships, the importance of community design. He was articulate, focused, easy to talk to. I found myself relaxing into the conversation, just a little. Then, at 7:34, they arrived. Nathan walked in first, hand on the small of her back. Kelsey followed, dressed in a slim red dress and black heels. She was radiant in that curated kind of way, like someone who never had to ask twice for attention. Her hand grazed a shoulder as they laughed at something only they shared. The hostess led them to the table beside us, just a few feet away. I didn't look directly at them, but I could feel the weight of their presence, like static in the air. I reached for my glass, fingers steady. Daniel kept talking. He hadn't noticed them yet. He was explaining a design challenge involving a city floodplain. I nodded, asked a question, kept the rhythm flowing. From the corner of my eye, I saw Nathan pour the wine. His hand brushed against Kelsey's as he passed her glass. She tilted her head and laughed. Her earrings shimmered in the candlelight. And then I turned slightly, pretending to reach for my napkin. My eyes met Nathan's. He froze. The wine bottle tilted awkwardly in his hand. The waiter caught it just in time before it spilled. Kelsey turned, following his gaze. Her smile fell. I held the moment just long enough. Then I looked away. "Excuse me for a moment," I said to Daniel, my voice calm. "I just need to step away." "Of course," he said, rising politely as I walked toward the restrooms. The hallway was quiet, dimly lit. Music from the dining room faded behind me. And then footsteps. "Vanessa!" It was her. Kelsey stood just a few feet away, her voice barely above a whisper. You're Nathan's wife. I nodded. Slowly. She looked pale. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I tilted my head slightly. And you're the one holding hands with my husband under the table, while your husband is sitting less than 10 feet away. Please, she whispered. Not here. Why not? I said, still calm. Isn't this what you wanted? Candlelight. Romance. A little excitement. Her eyes filled with panic. She looked like she wanted to run. Daniel doesn't know, she said. No, I replied. But he will. I stepped past her without another word. As I turned the corner, I saw Nathan rising from his chair, panic in his eyes. Vanessa, what are you doing? I didn't stop. I called over my shoulder, just loud enough. Daniel? Could you come here a moment? He stood. Nathan's face drained of color. Kelsey turned away. And just like that, the curtain lifted. Daniel walked toward me slowly, his expression shifting from confusion to concern. He looked at me, then at Nathan, then at Kelsey, who had now sunk into her seat, hands trembling against her wine glass. What's going on? He asked softly. I turned to face him fully. Daniel, I'm so sorry to do this here, but I didn't know another way to tell you the truth without it being denied or twisted. His eyebrows furrowed. He looked back at Kelsey. Truth about what? Kelsey's voice cracked. Daniel, please. Let's just talk at home. But Daniel didn't move. He looked at me, waiting, trusting that whatever was coming next wasn't fiction. I kept my tone steady. Your wife and my husband have been having an affair. For months. I found out earlier this week. Messages. Photos. Trips they claimed were for work. Kelsey let out a strangled breath. Vanessa! I raised my hand, just slightly, not to silence her with force, but with finality. I didn't come here to humiliate anyone, I said. I came here to make sure the truth stood in the same room as the lie. Daniel stood frozen, then turned his gaze toward Kelsey. Is this true? Her silence said everything. Nathan stepped forward, his voice hoarse. Vanessa, please. Can we just... No, I interrupted, still calm. We can't, because you had every chance to tell me. You had every chance to stop, and you didn't. I turned back to Daniel. I invited you here under false pretenses, and for that I truly apologize. But I thought if I were in your position, I would want someone to show me. Not to yell, not to destroy, just to show me. Daniel looked at Kelsey, then at Nathan, then at me. You invited me here, he said slowly, knowing we'd all be in the same room? I nodded once. Yes, because sometimes people only believe the truth when it sits across from them at a dinner table. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, finally, he turned to Kelsey. His voice was nearly a whisper. You were going to let me sit there all night while you drank wine with him. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Nathan reached for my hand. Vanessa, please don't do this. We've been married for 30 years. I stepped back. We had 30 years, Nathan. And you burned them down for someone who was never going to fight for you when it mattered. His jaw clenched. I messed up. I know that. But we can fix this. We can talk. I shook my head. You don't fix a house that's rotten at the foundation. You tear it down and build something that won't collapse under rain. I turned to the waiter and gave a small nod. Would it be possible to move to a private room? Of course, ma'am. Daniel followed me, silently. Kelsey and Nathan didn't. The room was small, quiet, candlelit. The music was softer here, more classical than jazzy, like the aftermath of a storm. Daniel sat down across from me, his hands folded tightly. I don't know what to say, he murmured. You don't have to say anything, I replied. I didn't bring you here to get revenge. I brought you here because I figured maybe you deserved the truth just as much as I did. He leaned back, staring at the flickering candle between us. I believed her. I never questioned her. We weren't perfect, but I never imagined this. I know, I said quietly. Neither did I. We sat there for a while in silence, the kind that doesn't demand to be filled. Eventually, Nathan appeared at the door. Vanessa, can I just talk to you? Alone. Daniel looked at me, waiting. I nodded. I'll be fine. Nathan stepped in, his face drawn, eyes tired. For the first time in years, he looked older than me. I don't even know where to begin, he said, voice cracking. Start from Monday night, I replied. When you got that reservation confirmation, that's when I knew. He paused, then dropped into the chair across from me. It was a mistake, he whispered. It started as a joke, a distraction. I felt lost, forgotten at home. And she made you feel wanted, I finished. I know. That's what all men say when they rewrite the story to make themselves the victim. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he said. You're the only woman I've ever truly loved. I tilted my head. Then why did you look at her the way you used to look at me? He didn't answer. I stood. I'm not angry anymore, Nathan. Not in the way I was. Anger fades. But what stays is clarity. And I'm finally clear on something. I'm not spending the rest of my life shrinking myself just to keep a man who doesn't see me. He stood up too, voice cracking. So that's it. I nodded. You'll be out of the house by Monday. I'll speak to a lawyer next week. You're really doing this after all we've built? I'm not destroying anything, I said softly. You already did. I'm just stepping out from the ruins. I walked past him, back to the table, back to Daniel. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. The night didn't end with shouting. There was no shattered glass, no thrown plates, no apologies screamed across a parking lot. It ended in silence. When Daniel and I left the restaurant, we didn't speak. The air outside was brisk, the kind that wrapped around your shoulders and reminded you that you were still alive, even if your world had just cracked wide open. He walked me to my car. Are you all right to drive? He asked. I nodded. Are you? He gave a short laugh. Not really, but I think I'd rather be moving than sitting still tonight. I didn't press him. We exchanged polite goodbyes, like strangers who had witnessed the same fire from different windows. Then I drove home, barefoot by the time I hit the freeway, heels tossed onto the passenger seat. When I got inside, I didn't turn on the lights. I walked to the bedroom, unzipped the dress slowly and let it fall in a puddle of silk at my feet. I stood in front of the mirror in my slip and stared at the woman, looking back. She didn't look destroyed. She looked new. In the quiet, my phone buzzed. Nathan. Again. Missed call. Missed call. Text, please. Just talk to me. Another. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. And one more. I love you. I powered the phone off. That was the last night I ever shared a roof with him. The next morning, I packed a small suitcase and drove to a friend's lake house just outside Duluth. For the first time in over 3 decades, I woke up without worrying what my husband needed, what my sons might call about, what the calendar demanded. I just breathed. Monday, when I returned, Nathan was gone. The house felt hollow, but not in a painful way. More like it had been aired out after years of holding its breath. I didn't cry when I saw the empty closet. I didn't touch the framed photo, still on the nightstand. I simply called a lawyer. The divorce papers were served a week later. Nathan didn't fight. Not really. He offered apologies, long-winded emails, texts filled with regret. He even sent flowers to the school. 4 dozen white roses with a note. 30 years is worth saving. I gave them to the janitorial staff. 2 weeks after filing, I received a message I hadn't expected. Daniel, coffee at Tanner's? Simple. No pressure. No strings. I looked at the clock. 9:12 a.m. I replied, give me 15 minutes. We met at a small corner cafe downtown. I wore a scarf over my hair and no makeup. He looked the same as that night, quiet, exhausted, but grounded. We talked for an hour. Then 2. Not about them. Not even about what happened. We talked about architecture, about teaching, about music. He told me he used to play the piano, but hadn't in years. I told him I used to paint, but gave it up when the kids were born. That coffee turned into brunch the next weekend, then another, and then, without ever discussing it out loud, it became something else. Something steady, gentle. He never touched me without asking. He never looked at me like I was broken, just rebuilding. Like him. Months passed. Kelsey moved out of state. A former coworker of Nathan's told me she'd quit after word of the affair spread. Apparently, the firm didn't appreciate having to clean up a personal scandal on company letterhead. She left without ceremony, just a short farewell message in the office group chat and a one-line email to Daniel. "I'm sorry I made you lose faith in love." He showed it to me over dinner one night. "Did you?" I asked. He looked at me for a long time. "No, because I'm learning how to believe in something better, not in promises, just in consistency." I didn't answer, but I didn't need to. There's a silence between two people who've lost everything and then started building something that doesn't need to be named. That was us. On a warm Sunday in July, we sat on my porch, watching the sky streak with lavender and gold. I pulled a blanket over my lap and sipped from a mug of tea. "Do you think we've changed?" I asked. Daniel turned to me, a slow smile forming. "No, I think we're just returning to who we were before we had to become someone else for someone who didn't deserve it." That answer sat in my chest for hours. Not long after that, we started walking together every evening, along the river, past the old iron bridge near Riverside. No hand-holding, no titles, just steps in the same direction. And one night, in the silence between streetlights, he stopped. "I'm not in a rush," he said. "I'm not trying to make this anything you don't want. But if one day you feel ready, I'd like to know what your favorite place in the world is, so I can take you there." I didn't respond, but the look in my eyes told him enough. Because the truth is, sometimes what begins in devastation doesn't end in despair. Sometimes it ends in peace. A year later, almost to the day, I received an unexpected envelope in the mail. It was cream-colored, thick and formal. My name, Vanessa Morgan, written in cursive blue ink across the front. Inside, an invitation. "Retirement celebration for Professor Elaine Benson Friday. 6 p.m. St. Paul Conservatory Hall, Elaine." My former department chair. The same woman I'd lied to a year ago about my mother being hospitalized. She was one of the few people who never asked questions, but always seemed to know more than she said. I hadn't seen her since the divorce. I wasn't sure I wanted to go. Not because of Elaine, but because I knew there was a chance Nathan might be there. He and Elaine had kept in touch after the separation. He'd been her former student years before he ever became my husband. But I went, not because I wanted to be seen, but because I wanted to know if I stood in a room with the man who had betrayed me, would I still feel small? Or would I feel nothing? That night I wore navy, clean lines, minimal jewelry, no makeup beyond mascara. I didn't dress to impress. I dressed to witness my own peace. The conservatory was warm with soft lighting and filled with people mingling over champagne and small bites. String music floated in from the corner, light and unobtrusive. I greeted familiar faces, some surprised, some awkward, but no one asked questions, and no one said Nathan's name, until he appeared. He was standing near the wine table, slightly thinner than I remembered, a little gray at the temples now, still polished, but the confidence, the arrogance he once wore like a badge, it was gone. He turned, saw me, and for a beat, the entire room seemed to still. He walked toward me slowly, wine glass in hand, his voice softer than I remembered. "Vanessa," he said, "I didn't think you'd come." "I didn't think I'd see you here either," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. He offered a faint smile. "Elaine's one of the few who still speaks to me." There was no resentment in his voice, just fact. He looked down for a moment, then back up. "I heard you filed. Officially. I nodded. Last summer. It's done. He swallowed. And are you okay? I paused, then answered not for him, but for myself. Yes, I said clearly. I'm rebuilding life on my own terms, and I'm not alone. Just then, a familiar figure stepped into view. Daniel, in a charcoal blazer, hands in his pockets, scanning the room with quiet observation. When he saw me, he smiled, the soft kind that's meant just for you. Nathan followed my gaze. His eyes flicked back to me, something unreadable passing across his face. I always thought you'd wait, he said quietly, that you'd give me another chance. I know, I said. That was your mistake. He exhaled long and slow. I lost everything, Vanessa. No, I said gently. You gave everything away. There's a difference. He looked at me one last time. Not with love. Not even with regret. Just finality. The way people look when they realize a door isn't just closed. It's no longer part of the house. I turned, walked toward Daniel, and took his arm without hesitation. He didn't ask what had been said. He didn't need to. As we stepped out into the night, the lights from the conservatory spilled behind us, golden and soft. I looked up at the sky. The stars were faint, but still there. Do you regret going? Daniel asked as we reached the parking lot. I shook my head. No, I think I needed to see it. See what? That I don't owe anyone my life, especially not someone who tried to dim it. He smiled, and in that moment, I realized something I hadn't been able to say aloud until now. Daniel, I said softly, there was a time I thought betrayal was the end of the story. And now, he asked. I looked at him. Now, I think it was just the comma before the sentence that finally began with me. 1 year, 3 months, and 16 days after the night I sat across from Daniel Grant at Le Mistral, I found myself in a completely different place. Not just physically, emotionally. The cottage I now called home sat on the edge of Silverleaf Lake, about 30 minutes outside Minneapolis. It wasn't large, just 2 bedrooms, a wide porch, and a wall of windows facing the water. I bought it with my own money after the divorce was finalized, using savings I had once thought I'd spend traveling with Nathan in our retirement. Instead, I spent mornings here watching the light shift over the lake, sipping coffee in silence, or curled up with a book that didn't end in heartbreak. Daniel never moved in. That was by choice. We weren't rushing anything. We weren't building anything on obligation. What we had was different. He came on weekends, brought flowers from the co-op, and left his toothbrush in the second drawer without fanfare. We cooked together. We watched old films. He played piano again, softly, carefully, like he was relearning how to let joy back into his fingertips. Sometimes he still looked at me as if he wasn't sure he deserved this kind of peace. And sometimes I caught myself doing the same, because after 30 years of being the strong wife, the devoted mother, the silent supporter, I didn't recognize the woman who now let herself be adored without apology. One evening, as we sat on the porch swing, I looked over at him. He had a sketch pad in his lap, doodling the outline of the dock and willow trees beyond it. His glasses slipped down his nose. His socks didn't match. He was beautiful. Do you think we're healed? I asked him quietly. He didn't answer right away. Then, I don't think healing has a finish line, Vanessa. I think we just stop bleeding and start growing things in the scars. I nodded. That made sense, because I no longer hurt when I saw Nathan's name in my inbox. I didn't flinch when someone said the word affair in passing. I didn't replay conversations or wonder what I could have done differently. I had let it go, fully, completely, and in its place was something real, something unglamorous but solid, not fireworks but warmth, not adrenaline but safety. Daniel never said forever, but he always said, I'm here. That was enough. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I found a small box tucked between my sweaters. Inside was a note card in Daniel's handwriting, for when you're ready to name this thing we've been building. Underneath the card was a silver key. No pressure, no question, just possibility. I didn't bring it up right away. I didn't feel like I had to. That was the difference between what I had now and what I used to call love. With Nathan, everything had a clock ticking, a performance to maintain, a role to play. With Daniel, everything felt like breath. Easy, earned. The next time he visited, I handed him back the key. And I kissed him, not because I owed him anything, but because I finally understood something. Love that requires you to disappear to make it work, that isn't love. Love that waits without pressure, stands beside you in silence, and lets you return to yourself piece by piece, that's the kind that lasts. There are women watching this right now, women who've given their whole hearts to people who only took what they needed and left them empty. Maybe you've been lied to. Maybe you've been replaced. Maybe you've been sitting beside someone who hasn't really seen you in years. This story isn't about revenge. Not really. It's about what happens when a woman finally sees herself clearly and realizes she was never the problem. It's about choosing peace over performance, self-worth over survival, healing over holding on. So if you're watching this and your heart feels cracked, let me say this clearly. You are not too old to start over. You are not too broken to be whole again. And you are never, ever too late to choose yourself